All right, welcome everyone to another episode of O365A. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about the new announcement that came out November 8th, where Microsoft states that they're updating the new presence in Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business. So they are adding some additional new modes in the Teams and Skype Admin Center that should be released sometime this year, from what they've stated. And they'll be including the ones that are currently there, existing ones, which are Teams only mode, which may be available in some but not others, Skype for Business only, and then the two new ones are Skype for Business with team collaboration and Skype for Business with team collaboration in meetings. So I'm going to pass it over to Michael to kick us off.
Yeah, so this Teams only mode has been showing up in tenants. I think it's still rolling out, so it might not be in all tenants today. But you have the ability to set your users or your organization as Teams only via PowerShell if it's not in your admin center. And that PowerShell commandlet is under the grant-CS Teams upgrade policy. And this is found under the Skype for Business Online PowerShell module. If you don't supply a identity to apply it to, and you set the policy to be upgrade to Teams, then you'll do it tenant-wide. If you put an identity in there, then it'll upgrade to Teams will only apply to a user. So that mode should be showing up in tenants or in the admin center shortly. That's rolling out. One thing to note is organizations that are looking to go Teams only mode, you still need at this time to turn on the Skype for Business feature license because without that license, you can't actually do things like use the Skype for Business Online PowerShell modules to grant policies. So there's kind of a catch-22 right now where you can't enable direct routing and some Teams features unless you have that Skype license still on. But I'll pass it to Curtis on some of his experiences on presence and some of these modes.
Yeah, so being an early adopter, and I like living on the edge, so I tried Teams only mode in one of the tenants that I use quite often. And being one of the first, the experience I had was there was a handful of people in Teams only mode, and the rest of the organization was still in Skype for Business. Specifically, they were in a mode called Legacy mode, which as the announcement Habib refers to, is going to disappear soon, and that will be Islands mode. So Legacy mode will become Islands mode. And one of the key takeaways I had was actually one of the big limitations in that situation where you just have a handful of people in Teams only mode and the rest of the organization using Skype for Business is when I initiated a chat, an IM, to someone internal using Skype for Business, when they're in Legacy or Islands mode, they wouldn't get the chat, but instead would get an email saying someone is trying to contact you on Teams, and then the email has instructions on how to install Teams. And that was challenging because those people weren't in a position to adopt Teams. So one way to handle that is to set those people in your organization that aren't able to upgrade to Teams right now to actually explicitly set them to a Skype for Business mode. So you could set them to Skype for Business only or one of the other Skype for Business modes, and then they will get the chat in IM. So that was a bit challenging and a good lesson learned. Dino, I think some of your experiences too, you had similar results, right?
Yeah, for sure. I've been working with a couple of customers that are making the transition to Teams, and I think the good news was they've learned through trial and error, and for them it was mostly enabling POCs of users in the Teams only mode, and quickly finding out that people they were corresponding with within their sort of core circle, they were noticing presence wasn't updating, and that was simply due to the fact that those users were still in Islands mode. And so the key message is, when you're thinking about this transition to Teams, you're not just thinking about the users you're moving to Teams, but the users that you're not yet moving to Teams. So you've got to plan it in such a way that you're setting the modes for everyone, not just the users you're moving to Teams. So in this case, you'd be setting the modes to Teams only or to one of the other modes that have talked about and then also setting the corresponding Skype users to Skype for Business only, or one of the other modes if appropriate, and that will rectify the presence issues that you're seeing. So that's the thing that we need to keep in mind.
And I think
when
that's it's just planning for the overall user experience, right? It's not just planning for the new Teams user experience. It's the holistic view of how are my users going to be communicating with each other when they're on two different platforms, right? And so it's just in addition to your point, right? It's just making the cognizant decision as to what modes the users that need to be in those particular, I guess, policies, right? And it's in this, if you think of it as, maybe they have some features that they are relying on the Skype for Business side as opposed to the Teams side. So there's certain things that that the Teams doesn't have yet that is not enabling them to move over, right? Those are some of the people that may stay on that Skype for Business side of things for a little bit longer until the Teams has the feature set required. Sorry, Michael.
Yeah, I was just saying when at the beginning of the year when they first started talking about these modes, I thought I kind of had my IT support type hat on, and I was like, every customer is going to flow through Islands mode to try the client and then get to Teams only, and kind of have that transition of all their users through that path. And the longer I was in Islands mode, the more I wanted to get out of that mode. So for me personally, the minute I got to Teams only mode was kind of a relief of using one client. I know what everything's going to happen. It's all going to land in my one client. I know, unified presence was a feature that was going to be, or that was announced. That was kind of to bridge that gap while you're in Islands mode. I don't think presence alone was enough to make the experience of being in Islands mode perfect. And so Microsoft has kind of shifted the presence to this updated model where it kind of matches what you're doing with the client. I think that makes more sense in how these modes work now. I do think that if you're going to pilot, have a small group that's going to pilot in Islands mode. And once they test the functionality and the features, get them to Teams only mode. So make sure you have these kind of hard lines on what client your users are going to live in. So for me, in my organization, we're aggressively moving everyone to Teams only mode because the experience in Teams has, all the additional functionality of collab and live events and all that stuff in Teams. It's keeping us from wanting to go just Skype only mode. And so the more we pull over to Teams only mode, the better our experience in our org.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. The sort of lesson I learned was probably the best scenario is to get everybody or a lot of people to Teams only mode. But if you can't do that, Islands mode really isn't a great situation having, half your users on Islands mode. You're better to actually explicitly set whatever mode they need, like Skype for Business mode, if you do have Teams only people.
I think it's important to note if you are going to be in Islands mode that you're instructing those users to run both those clients. It's side by side really, and that's the other breakdown we see is that today I'm not going to run the Skype client. I'm just going to use Teams, and that's going to quickly break down. So that's just part of the user education that if you're going to stay in Islands mode for a period of time just to sort of dip your feet. Absolutely make sure that everybody knows that they have to be running both clients side by each and then explain some of the other idiosyncrasies along with that. The second they decide not to run them, you've got to do that for sure.
And you have to think about mobile clients as well and all that kind of aspects as well, because now you have two clients that you have to run on your mobile at the same time too. So education and expectations need to be set if you're in Islands. But yeah. My preference is, stick to a mode, a full mode. So Teams only mode for those that want to use Teams, a Skype and a collab, or Skype only for the ones that are ready to jump to Teams fully.
Yeah, and if you have I think the other portion that Michael you're sort of talking about was you needing a Skype license to perform certain functions and stuff like that too. And I think that goes towards the federation piece as well. So that's still required from a federation perspective, even if you're on Teams only mode, right? Because it still uses that sort of pipe to transition into the Skype for Business Federation with other partners, right? And then in your contact list as well, if you're primarily an internal user perspective, then when you move over to Teams only mode, it'll bring over your internal users, but your external contacts will still not be available. So you just got to make note of that when moving over. And if you make maybe Michael actually has a really cool tool that exports all your contacts, and you can manually add them into to Teams if you're really wanting to push and go that way.
We should be seeing external contacts pretty soon. I mean, there's a lot of push on that. They're there. They're just hidden right now. So I think that's one of the top priorities of the engineering team, is to get that exposed. But yeah, like you were saying, right now, even if you two organizations are Teams only modes, Federation's still flowing through the Skype for Business Federation at this time. So you'd be getting a little bit, or kind of almost an interop functionality. You won't be able to do desktop share out of that, but you can, create a meeting or whatever to do that desktop share.
Awesome. So great discussion, guys. And thanks everybody for listening in, and hopefully we'll catch you on the next episode.
Yeah, thanks.
See ya.